Let me quickly share with you the WhatsApp line for those of you who would want to contribute to the conversation this morning. But before that, I need to remind you that we have three very important subject matters or topics to look at. First of all, we're looking at that surprising turn of events. You know, many Ghanaians were expecting the minorities to put up a very strong showing in Parliament by at least having all their 136 members of Parliament voting against the president's nominees, 6 of them. But it turned out that the best the minority could do was about 110 or so, wondering where the other 20 or more than 20 MPs, why they decided to vote the manner in which they did. Now, a lot of NDC activists and a lot of NDC sympathizers have been extremely disappointed and sad and hurt by what happened in Parliament. So we'll examine that. We'll find out what exactly happened and why those MPs decided to vote the way they did in that direction, despite the parties communicate to them to make sure that they've all of them vote in the same way. Now, there's also a second topic: political party funding or financing, campaign financing. The former president John Dramani Mahama this week launched his own, fundraising platform, but then also called for some amendments to the Political Parties Act, where, he sort of encouraged political parties to do what is called crowdsourcing or crowdfunding, as he himself is doing. But then he raises a bigger question about how we're funding our political parties, because the fear is that there's some persons who are there who are funding our political parties illegitimately. And so we'll look at that particular topic as well. And then the third issue has to do with Dr. Apiahene, who is a known MPP activist who's been appointed onto the Electoral Commission board, creating all kinds of suspicions and disappointments, where some civil society organizations are asking the president to take a second look at that decision, because then you'll be setting a very bad precedent for subsequent leaders, and that's not good for our democracy. And so we'll look. These are the 3 topics we intend to look at if the time permits us. But the first thing we're going to do is this: we're going to play you a video of the Member of Parliament for Tamale Central, Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed, who decided to do something quite interesting. But before we do that again, let me introduce my resource persons. I do have in the studio lawyer Godwin Eduzi Tamaklo, who is a private legal practitioner and also a member of the NDC's communications. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us on Inside
Good
Pages.
Morning, Moro, and good morning to the Honourable MP.
Right. And also the Honourable Member of Parliament for the Anyasu Tuom constituency, Dixon Adomaku, is also joined us here on Inside Pages. Good morning, sir. Thank you very much for joining us. Right. It's Dixon Adomaku Kisi. Yes. Right. You have such a beautiful name, isn't it? Yeah. All right. So he's representing the New Patriotic Party. Obviously, he's going to be communicating for the party and the government. So we'll also be joined by Zoom Dr. Osei Kwapon, who is a fellow with CDD Ghana, who's also got some strong views to express on the issues that we are bringing to you this morning. Franklin Kujo, who is the founding president of Imani Africa, will also be joining us shortly via Zoom as well. The Member of Parliament, Murtala Mohammed, will also be joining us because he's got some views as well to express on what happened in Parliament, what he believes went wrong, and how the party can fix it. And so once we get him on the line, we'll speak to him as well. But let's quickly watch this video.
This is how I voted. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, this one, no, 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 all of them no. This is how I voted on record. This is how I voted. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, this one, no, 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 all of them no. This is how I voted on record. This is how I voted. Ibrahim Murtala Mohammed, this one, no, 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 all of them no. This is how I voted on record.
All right. So, really, what was the Member of Parliament's motivation for doing that? What was his reason, really, for letting the public know the direction in which he voted? Was it that he foresaw some similar thing happen? Well, he foresaw something very untoward happening, and that's why he decided to do what he did, in order to let us know that, yes, or perhaps some persons can decide to go another way, but he would go with the party's position. So Murtala Mohammed will be joining us shortly as far as this party is concerned. I'll start in-house with lawyer Godwin Geduzi Tamaklo. Of course, he's a member of the NDC. I'd ask him what he makes of what happened in Parliament. There are some who feel, well, this is really not a big deal anyway. Anyway, boss, it's good to have you again. When the results were finally announced by the Speaker of Parliament, I don't know what your immediate reaction was.
Okay, so good morning once again, and good morning to our cherished viewers.
Let me beg of you and rudely interrupt. It's 0249. Now, if you want to join the conversation via WhatsApp, it's 0249 155 646. 0249 155 646, as you can see it on your screens. We need, I want to hear what you make of what happened in Parliament. I really would want to hear what you make of Parliament, and also the other two issues that I've raised. Please go ahead, Godwin.
Yes. First of all, the voting processes and everything obviously accorded with the requirements of law. Now, that said, on a personal note, I've always try to manage my expectation in such complex political undertakings. Right. I always try to manage my expectations.
Right.
I do so having in mind relationships.
Right.
I do so having in mind regional concerns and sentiments. I do so having in mind certain tribal connections, associations.
Right.
And so I've always tried to, as much as I can, not to overburden somebody with an expectation.
Right.
And so when the results came, to be honest, I wasn't surprised at all. I wasn't surprised at all.
Okay. Based on the reasons that you're giving?
Based on the reasons.
Okay.
Because you see, my party, the NDC, has been in power before.
Right.
I have seen how ministers under us were approved. Right?
Right.
And I've seen situations where most of the approval were even done based on consensus.
Right.
Okay? And there are instances where you ask, someone, why did you vote for Minister so? The person forthright will tell you that, my village people called me to support him because they say he's one of their own. Or he creates jobs there.
Right.
So those little sentimental issues, you cannot take it from the broader strategy.
Right.
You must always factor it in your overall strategic moves.
Right.
So for me, it didn't come as a surprise. I would rather plead with the rank and file of our party that whatever it is that happened yesterday, we should quickly let go and face the greater threat, the greater challenge that is ahead of us, and quickly discard this one. I have absolute confidence in the leadership of the minority in Parliament. I think so far they have done so well in keeping the minority front going. And on any day, I would want to reaffirm my support and confidence in the current leadership of the minority in Parliament. They have the skill set, they have what it takes to, as it were, to take the NDC to where it is.
Okay.
And you see, for me, let me also make the point. The whip system, I have always had a challenge with the whip system.
What challenge do you have with the whip system?
And you see, I always use Christ as the best model of leadership. Jesus Christ as the best model of leadership. And I always say, Christ didn't have 136 MPs to manage. Christ only had 12 disciples. But of these 12 disciples, he could not get the loyalty of all. Right. In fact, it was his finance minister, his treasurer, who betrayed him, the one who was keeping his money. First of all, Moro, whoever you would ask to keep your money is someone you trust so much, even among the 12, right? So if the one that you trusted the most, that's Judas Iscariot, is the one who committed the betrayal, what does it tell you? Human considerations are very complex.
Right.
And so in leadership modeling, even when you want to whip people, you must create an exception. That what if? What if? And usually the what if helps you to manage expectation.
Right.
I'll leave it at that.
But how about those, and maybe let me come to Dr. John Osai Kwapong. Doc, I mean, this was a situation where the party actually whipped its group in Parliament. There was actually a statement where the party said, leave whatever it is that you're doing in the constituency, focus on focus on what's happening in Parliament, do everything you can to make sure that you put up a very, very, very great showing, i.e., make sure that all the 136 MPs are there to indicate, in the strongest terms possible, that you are not for this. How then did we have close to about 15, 20 MPs deciding otherwise? From where you sit, what do you make of what happened in Parliament?
Well, good morning, Moro. Good morning, everyone. You also have to keep in mind that ultimately, when that individual MP is casting their vote, you are not there with them, right? So you can do all the mobilization, you can send all the strong messages, you can do all the urging, I watched, when the proceedings was going on, there was a brief appearance by the Honorable Minority Leader. I think the Honorable Okudzeto Ablakwa was also by his side, or one or two MPs. And he spoke with a lot of confidence, saying, all our 136 members are here, we are ready to vote, the vote must go on. But ultimately, it was still between that individual MP, the ballot paper he or she was giving, and that booth in which he or she had to cast that vote. And it's some of these things you can't make. There is no way you can 100% predict the outcome. On a policy issue, maybe it would have been different, right? Maybe if it was, let's say, some issue of taxation, or maybe e-levy or something, then I can see how it will be a little easier to whip all of your MPs into line and strictly to the party line.
Okay.
But yesterday, one of the things that I said to myself was, in as much as, quote unquote, the party's position was, we won't approve the nominees, I kept saying to myself, I refuse to believe that none of these nominees can even count on just one NDC MP voting for them, when you take into consideration things like the relationships they've built in Parliament over the years, right? The friendships they've formed over the years. It was just difficult for me to believe that on an issue like this, that a fellow MP from the other side of the political aisle, with whom you've developed a certain bond of friendship, can actually turn a blind eye to you and cast a vote against your nomination to serve in a ministerial position. So I wasn't surprised by the outcome. I've just been intrigued by the dynamics and the post-vote conversations, right? If you observe some of the sentiments being expressed, if you look at some of the conversations going on, that is what truly intrigues me. But in terms of the outcome, I really wasn't surprised.
But here's the thing. Do you think that on hindsight, the NDC made a mistake? Because, first of all, you don't have the numbers. We're talking 136 against 137/138. Secondly, when you look at the positions that, were up there to be approved, we're talking about agri, we're talking about finance, we're talking about, what's the other one? Trade. I mean, was the NDC saying that these positions were not necessary? Yes, there's an entirely different argument about the size of government and the call for the government to do something about the elephant-sized government. That's an issue. That's a legitimate call. But to have asked the government not to approve these very critical positions, do you think that on hindsight, or from where you sit, was it a bad call in the first place, based on these two reasons that I've given?
Right. And, I always say that you fight the fights that are worth fighting,
right,
not the fights that you can win. So perhaps in their calculus, even if it was not a fight they could win, it was a fight worth fighting because it allowed them to really reinforce and make a statement about the things you've mentioned, the whole idea of, an elephant-sized government, etc., etc. But for me, I would have preferred that the party would have picked a different fight or a different battle with the government on a very different, on a different issue, right? I mean, you have Supreme Court justices nominees coming up. You have revenue measures that are still yet to be approved. I mean, there are, for me, bigger fights than this one where it really was a minister has resigned and therefore the appointing authority has nominated someone to fill in that position. And for me, that wasn't a fight worth fighting because in comparison to other things, you could have staked a lot of that energy and that political capital to quote unquote fight the administration on something else. The other thing that was also very instructive was that for the NPP to have called the bluff of the NDC, right, even when they knew that at least two of their members could not be present for the voting, suggested to me that they knew that some way, somehow, these nominees could still count on a handful of people from the other side of the political aisle to get their nominations to go through. And again, like I keep saying, I just could not accept the fact that you and I could be in parliament for months, years, and not develop some kind of friendship, bond, connections, right? Even though we may belong to two different political parties. And on the day that I need one or two votes from the other side to get my nomination through, I can't count on it. I just couldn't accept the premise of that argument. And I don't know if that is what informed. And I'm surprised that, and again, I don't know what went into the calculus of the leadership of the minority. But at the same time, I'll be very surprised if they didn't factor in all of those little dynamics before taking that strong position of saying we are whipping everybody in line, oppose all of these nominations.
So basically, based on everything that you said, the NDC should have known right from the get-go that they were fighting a losing battle. This is not a battle they could have won in the first place because
they should have had some inclination.
Right. So you agree with those who say that expectations were raised needlessly highly?
Yes.
Right.
I agree with that
Okay.
sentiment. Yes.
Okay. All right, then. I'm going to ask a final question to you, which has to do with, do you smell sabotage? And that's sabotage within the context of the leadership shakeup, and how some persons will say, well, really, would it be worth fighting for this? Because my mentor, leader, colleague, whatever it is that means to the person, has been taken from that position. And so I'm going to teach the Acto-Forcing-led group a lesson. They haven't healed yet. They are still pained that, their person has been taken of that position. Do you smell that in there? Do you think that that factor is something that we can gloss over?
To read motives into the kinds of things that people do, right?
Okay.
But I would also, why would you want to be driven by sabotage if really that was some of the motivations for those who broke party ranks, right? I'm reminded of one of my mother's favorite proverbs when we were growing up, right? Whenever she says, she gives you a piece of advice and she thinks you're doing the opposite or you're doing something else, my mom would say, Sebi, the cripple thinks he's hurting his mother by dragging his butt on the floor, but he forgets that it is his buttocks that is shrinking, right? So for me, if you are motivated by sabotage, at the end of the day, who are you hurting? It is your party that you are hurting, right? And there is a much bigger fight, or there's a much bigger fight at stake that sabotaging your party for me would be, if truly it's part of that motivation, for me, it would be a very unfortunate thing to be motivated by, because there's something much bigger ahead that I would think the party would sort of have in front of it, right? I mean, you have 2024 and this idea that if truly it is time to rescue the Ghanaian from all of the economic challenges and hardships that the ordinary Ghanaian is facing, then why would you do things that would hurt your party and lose focus on that bigger fight that is coming?
Let me now speak to Murtala Mohammed. Now, Murtala Mohammed Ibrahim decided to take a video of how he voted. For some reason, he decided to take a video of it. He shot a video of it, and he's put out there, and it's all over social media circulating. Murtala Mohammed, Honorable, good morning. Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Good morning, Muru.
Hello?
Let me first and Muru.
Yes, please.
Yeah, let me first and foremost. That video was never meant for public consumption.
Oh, okay, great.
And I never posted this.
Okay.
It was a very senior colleague who, after the elections, had conversations with me, and I said, look, I took a video, and I personally, take responsibility for that, and I sent it to that person. And later, when I got calls, we've seen this video circulate, and I called the person. I said, but why would you do this? Because I felt that I could trust you. So first and foremost, it was never meant for public consumption.
Okay.
I never posted it anywhere on social media handle.
Okay.
But I want to just state that the idea that people who were against the change and leadership probably have been those who voted in the approval of this minister, for me, is completely rubbish. Hello?
Yes, I'm listening.
Hello, Moro.
I'm listening.
Yes. Yeah, if there was anybody who was vociferous against the change, I believe that I was one. And we maintained at the time that we were never against the individuals who were elevated as leaders. Our position was just against the process. The party went into it through the Council of Elders, and it was settled, and we move on. And as a democratic party, when you have stronger views, you express them. We have an outstanding working relationship with this new leadership, an outstanding working relationship with the national chairman, the national secretary, and the party leadership. What happened yesterday is most unfortunate, and I feel embarrassed that as members of the party, we went in and that didn't happen, because my position has always been that let's have our numbers counted. If we went in there and we had 136 an MPP using their 137, 138. That wouldn't be a problem. I would have known that, yes, we fought, we did what we were supposed to do. They had the people approved because of the numbers. But to have over 20 people or more doing this is most unfortunate. I also want to state that if there was anybody, Honorable Haruna Idrisu or Honorable Mutaka, were going to ask to vote against the position of the party, it would have been me. At no point in time did Honorable Haruna or Honorable Mutaka tell any of us or even say anything that is suggestive that they wanted us to do something to embarrass the leadership. At no point in time. As a matter of fact, what Honorable Haruna Idrisu and co repeatedly have been saying, we should do everything possible to assist this leadership. So the allegations that are going on is most unfortunate. At no point in time, I remember even yesterday, I was in the chamber when Honorable Haruna Idrisu arrived. And then he got to the coffee shop and said, oh, there's a funeral. One of our colleagues lost the mother, and they were having the funeral at the church at if you go to Labadi, there's this Anglican church there on your right. So he said, oh, let's go. And so a couple of us, he sat even in one of the cars of one of us, and we went there. And I remember he was telling us, look, we need to prove to the MPP that we are united, urging us to do everything possible to vote and rejecting these ministers. So I was taken aback after the voting, the kinds of allegations against Honorable Haruna Idrisu and those leaders. I think it's most unfortunate. And assuming I never took that video, and I took that video, frankly speaking, because everybody knew my position about the change. Look, you can ask Honorable Atufosin. We have been working assiduously with them because they are our leaders. The change have been effected. Some leaders came before the leaders who were changed, and therefore, when they go, new leaders also come. What is supreme is NDC. Look, the NDC. Hello?
I'm listening, Honorable. We're
Hello?
here.
Yeah, the NDC has given some of us a lot. We have a moral duty to do what the NDC expects us to do. And it was the directive of the party that we all vote in rejecting those ministers. That was the party's directives. So when it comes to party directive, you have no any other alternative. But I've seen a lot of hypocrisy. Perhaps don't accuse those who are accusing, I'm sorry, the network where I am, I just parked my car and then we're having this interaction. Perhaps those who are accusing those who voted, others for doing what they did, perhaps they even did that. And to be very honest with you, I can tell you it is embarrassing, but we should not be kind of exploiting. This has happened. The harm, and all of us, I'm embarrassed as a member of the NDC. The only thing that I take solace is that my conscience is very clean. I never voted for it. I voted no against all, and the evidence is there for everybody to show. Now you don't even know those who voted against the motion and those who voted against for the motion. But one thing I can tell you is that at no point in time did Honorable Haruna or Honorable Mutaka or the old leadership discuss or suggest to anybody, particularly me, because if there was anybody they would trust to have that discussions with, I believe that Honorable Haruna would have had that discussion with me, and at no point in time.
Okay.
And even when we went to the funeral and we're coming back, he said to him, you see, another incident happened. A colleague, we have a particular seat. The MPP describes it as the radical line. We took a decision that any of us who voted, we were going to take videos and pictures. I remember Honorable Bawa voted, took a picture. When he came, he showed me, this is how I voted. And I said, I want to take a picture, I'll take a video. That's what we did. Honorable Yusuf, MP Obole, when he voted, he said, look, I'm going to take a video. Honorable Nugbe Ashama, when he voted, he said, I'm going to take a picture of it. So there's another colleague of ours, Honorable Sumparu. Now, Honorable Sumparu voted against the motion. He voted, for the motion. When I heard it, I confronted him. He said, look, Honorable, this is how I voted. He showed me. Yet he's been maligned. So I think that we need to be very, very careful. Maybe people are not suspecting did that. Well, those who did that. Some will raise questions about
why should you vote and take a video? That video was never meant for public consumption. I did so because of some of these unnecessary allegations that have been leveled against people. And considering the fact that some of us were vociferous. In fact, ask the current leadership, ask Honorable Atuforsen. But for some of us, the CI, when they brought it, it would have been late. The first deputy speaker took us videos and said that we were those who prevented what they wanted to do. But nobody talks about it. So I think that it is unfortunate. It is so sad, it's embarrassing. I mean, for me, it is hurting. We have no excuse. We cannot not convince our grassroots and the teeming mass of the NDC that what we did, because even though I knew that I never voted for them, but I can't insulate myself. We must all collectively take the responsibility. Most unfortunate.
So,
Look,
so honorable.
I'm fasting.
So honorable. Who are these guys
Hello?
who are these guys who quotes and unquote betrayed the party's cause, and what do you think could possibly be their motivation?
How do you know those who betrayed the cause? Because it was an individual who went into the ballot, booth and voted. I am speaking for myself because unfortunately the video is out, and I took that video for my personal use because so that one day I could have a case. Unfortunately, someone who I shared it with, because that person had an engagement with me, unfortunately posted it.
Decided to put it
But
out
as to the motivation why people voted the way they voted, I can't sit here and give reasons why.
Okay.
But I think that the hypocrisy just sees, because look, in the matter of the judges, we had people who were saying a particular judge is from where I'm coming from, and therefore we think that we should do this. I mean, people should stop this.
Okay.
The NDC decision, even your direct family member, if he was in it, you need to abide by the decision of the NDC. And I have been very principled and maintained that position.
Okay.
But I've just told you that the lane they describe as a radical, we took a decision. Okay. And I've just told you when Honorable voted, Honorable Yusuf Nogo, they all came. But I decided that I'm not going to take a pic. I'm going to take a video with my voice. And that was precisely what I did.
Okay. All right, Honorable, thank you very much for joining us. And have a great day. That's the Honorable Murtala Ibrahim Mohammed Ibrahim. Is the Member of Parliament for the Tamale Central Constituency. I'll be coming back to Mr. Franklin Kujo and Dr. John Osai Kwapon. But let me now come to Honorable Dixon Adumako. Yes, Kisi. Who's also the Member of Parliament for the Anyanso constituency. Take his view. But I've heard some people say that perhaps you got your strategy right. You were able to, get some of the guys on the other side to come along with you to vote for the appointees. What kind of strategy is that? Because it's worked effectively. We're looking at close to 20 MPs, doing the job for you.
Well, first of all, let me thank you for having me here. And also reassure my constituents, the people of Anyanso Otum, that I've gone out to Parliament to do their bidding. And sometimes in executing this job, you may be moved by the information you have to take a certain decision that might not be in line. In this case, for the NDC, some of their folks took a decision that was not in line with the party, and that is because they are looking out for Ghana, and there's always that fine line between looking out for your country and then looking out for your party. But be it as it may, I think we had some few key things that some even told the NDC that, listen, I was going to vote for this person because he's my countryman, and these are things that are of very important dynamics when you're looking at election. And I remember in our back and forth with leadership, one of the key things that came out was the fact that one of the justices, from Volta region, we were very sure that most of the time, and let me just be very blunt, Voltarians look out for themselves. And it's the one thing that works, whether you are whatever color, whatever religion. When it comes to Volta region, they speak for themselves. And likewise, I think the northern region to a large extent, when it gets into the thick of it, they have that, let me say, fail mode,
Right.
which is, that is my countryman.
Right.
And I mean,
So they'll show solidarity.
that solidarity is powerful,
right.
and sometimes it's more than even the party's allegiance.
Right.
And these are the two things. So if somebody tells me that, and forgive me, if they say that tribe doesn't matter in politics, I'll tell them a big no.
Okay.
And if they tell you that relations doesn't matter, I'll tell you a big no.
Right.
And I think that for some of our members, they had very powerful relationship. I mean, let me cite, for instance, Ayini has taught some of our members.
True.
You understand? And I'm not saying he voted, but for a teacher to vote no on your student is a big deal. And I'm not saying he did, yes or no, because I don't know. But my point is that these are some of the interconnections, you know, where, for instance, somebody like Stephen Amwa-Stika, who is, you know, has a doctorate in insurance, statistics, and things like that, has also taught some people in the NDC, which then, I mean, a teacher you look up to cast a vote on him, your conscience, because you've been in class with him, and you know his competence, and you know that if not for political reasons that are not weighty, his competence is undisputed.
Right.
You know, the likes of, and I'll commend Ato Forson when he was interviewing Honorable Brian Champon, to the extent that Honorable Brian was like, Ato, you should vouch for me. You know me.
Right.
And that is the level of relationship that some of
nurtured over the years.
appointees had with the NDC. And without a stretch of a doubt, I remember one time Dwaboso's MP, who does farming in other jurisdictions, in some other MP's jurisdiction, and the fact that you know, he employs a lot of people in another MP's jurisdiction. If that MP is to decide on Dwaboso, he might be swayed, and the likes of Ken Ejapon now has a starch factory. And he has other companies not in his constituency.
Right.
And you can imagine the number of people he employs in somebody's constituency. And if you are the member of parliament for that area, and these thousands of staff members call on you that, as for this man, he's our savior. He's been working hard for us. It puts you in a certain situation when you're about to cast that vote.
I get it.
You have to think of the thousands of people he's employing in your constituency, and you're there to represent your people, and you need to make that judgment call.
Let me find out from Mr. Franklin Kujo. Franklin, are you with us? Hello, Franklin.
Yes, I am.
Yes, Franklin. I've heard some people say, and again, to buttress the point that lawyer Godwin Edith Tamaklo and Adumaku Kisi and Dr. John Osai-Kwapo have said that perhaps the party did not take into cognizance the social, cultural, and to some extent the economic dynamics and nuances that play out sometimes when it comes to conducting some of these exercises, i.e., he's been a long-time friend. My chief has called me to, to vote for him. We'll probably attend the same church. In any case, this is just about ministerial appointment. It's not about approving a tax handle or, something as dire, that goes to the heart or the core of, people's expectations of the performance or the conduct of the MPs. And so really, it's about agric, it's about trade, it's about finance, it's about local governance, it's about chieftaincy. Charlie, let's just go.
Well, good morning, my good friends, and to everybody watching. First of all, I think I understand the dynamics of relationships and, if you like, the tribe and all of those considerations.
Yeah.
But you see, I'm taking this view from the standpoint of the critical moment within which we find ourselves as a country, and the very policy arguments that have been advanced, not just by the NDC, but by almost every Ghanaian, when it comes to the issue about fiscal readjustment for this for the country, because we are currently in a big bind, right? So when the NDC decided that they were going to use the levers of power, at least this particular one that they had, in order to make a bold statement that, look, Mr. President, Mr. Government, as we are running the affairs of state, we have reached certain heights that we think you need to be a bit more circumspect, right? I mean, if for nothing at all, that statement that was supposed to be made was the best representation of it was this vote that taking place in Parliament. I thought that for once the NDC would have shown a lot of verve, especially the leadership in Parliament, of course the entire membership of the NDC in Parliament, and then just make this one big statement, right? And look, for me, as I said, we did have a hung parliament. It brought its blessings, but certain decisions have gone on. Certain actions of the state or the government have actually made it quite clear that it is a bit too stubborn to reason when it comes to reforms, especially when it comes to the issues around fiscal reforms, right? And so for me, this particular enterprise, which happened yesterday, or even before it happened, was for me the one biggest avenue to say, look, our politics is the way it has become, but we have an opportunity to make a statement, and the NDC members of Parliament should have. I mean, I insist, in spite of all the conversations around relationships and all of that. I mean, if we're considering that, then we have no basis to talk about anything that has significant bearing on our finances or on our development. So for me, I was quite disappointed, and I thought that yes, people may make all kinds of give meanings to certain motivations and all of that. Even some people have suggested on my wall that, well, what's it called? Elections are up on the NDC parliamentarians, and so possibly some sort of favors may have exchanged. I mean, again, I'm not into motive questioning, but you see, once we go on that path about relationships, about tribes, about religion, and the fact that these connections are very important, then people are also at liberty to say, okay, well, there may be another factor, which may be monetary, right? And so we get onto that slippery slope. I was heavily disappointed that the NDC did not stand together just to make that statement. After all, you know, people can ask questions about the importance of these ministries or what have you. That's another conversation. But I have thought, for instance, that we probably don't even need deputy ministers. The civil servants, the chief directors could be doing those jobs. In actual fact, since these persons vacated these posts, what impact has it had on the economy? Except drawing salaries, which maybe have been saved. What exactly can we quantify that there's been some addition or to the economy? Sorry, there's been some negative change that has impacted the economy because a particular minister did not sign, those who resigned, right? We can get into all those type of conversations, but I thought that a lot of people have made arguments about the size of government and the what's it called, and its impact on the economy, and for crying out loud, if there were certain opportunities as presented themselves or presented itself yesterday in Parliament, we need to take advantage of that. It's the only way we can refine our democracy. Otherwise, this all conversations about, you know, relationships and all of that, those things are social mores, and I understand that they could be useful, could be impactful in a democratic development of a country. We're not this type that we have. This type that we have a very leaky state, which decides that what the Constitution says, decides to just expand and expand and expand and expand and waste, right? Since you recall, since the Ministry of Finance asked bondholders, including myself, I was a convener, that we should come up with fiscal readjustment suggestions so that they can take that into consideration. And we did that, and the technical director signed off that deal. Have you heard a single news item about we will take forward these conversations about reducing the size of government, which, by the way, we said if the government had done some readjustment, reordering, just 6 billion cedis would have been saved immediately, including these ministries, and some of them that ought to be merged, and some of them that should not even exist, like the chieftaincy ministry. My own good brother, Stephen Asabi, I was rooting for him for, his position as chairman, by the way. But on principle, I did not think that ministry should ever exist, right? We give verifiable facts as to what should be done immediately to raise revenue, including, for instance, this deal that what's it called, the ACA deal, which the state was going to spend almost $1 billion, which civil society led by ASAP and Imani actually saved the country. Okay. But that was against some very stubborn refusal, right? But now we are going to hike taxes. There are 3 tax handles that are going to be proposed. And I do say, yes, maybe they may also pass that as well, burdening the Ghanaian very further. So there are legitimate means of ensuring these kinds of, should I call it, the change we want, the narrowing of the government's focus and its arms and legs. But they mostly do not listen to us. So if there's an opportunity in Parliament, it was the biggest one that we thought the NDC would have taken advantage of and then done what it did. Maybe the last point I'll make on this is that, well, if it is the case that we want to believe that, yes, people's motivations in terms of their religion, their ethnic backgrounds and all of that should factor, then if that was the case, or probably that is playing out, it is fairly easy to fish out, and I'm not using fish out here as a witch hunt, to fish out those people who may have voted against their own party anyway, because it will be obvious the people who are closer in terms of region and all of that to most of these appointees, by the way. But ultimately, then the vote should have been made public, right? Okay. I think that's another reform factor we need to start encouraging. That let's have the vote public. Let us know exactly how people voted, and then let's have it in such a way that we can then begin to make all those analysis as to why certain persons may have voted otherwise. Otherwise we'll get into this slippery slope of not knowing exactly what we have accounted for. All right. People voting the way.
Now, frankly, I know you have to join some other program, but please just grant us another 5 minutes. The Honorable Aduma Kwikisi wants to say something briefly, and then we can go to the issue about political party financing, because that's actually the more reason why we invited you to join us. Honorable, just something you want to say quickly?
Yes, I'm of the opinion that the NDC could have shown this satisfaction through a voice vote. Okay. And I think it would have been a much better quote unquote humiliation, right. In the sense that then you'd have made your point that on this policy or on government appointees, you're of the opinion that you would prefer that the president would have reduced. Okay. So either you abstain or you just make that public statement. Okay. And then when a voice vote is done, a case closed. But this is a case where then they went further and allowed their members to...
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, were you going to determine the decibel levels of the voices? Because on that day, presumably some people's voices may have been naturally muted because they may be suffering catarrh or something. Right, would you be?
You see, the position, my friend.
Sorry, this is just by way of
my friend Franklin Kujo. Mm-hmm. And before I proceed on that, I need to thank Franklin so much. Okay. About some 19 years ago or 17 years ago, we met at the University of Ghana. Then Imani had just started when he came, working, and we've kept that relationship today. Okay. But you see, the point I need to make is that, you see, I always say we are learning from the benefit of experience.
Absolutely.
he had raised the issue of the possibility of a voice vote. Maybe with the benefit of hindsight, a complete boycott would have sent a better message.
Right, right.
You see, when the caucus boycotts, then that is 136 taking a position. Then nobody gets the opportunity to express a
dissenting view.
A dissent. So take a boycott.
Right.
You see, sometimes you can't say, you see, I recall.
Strategy gone wrong.
I won't say a strategy gone wrong, but you see, I recall when the MPP issued their statement that their MPs should not partake in one of the exercises recently. I think the censure.
Yeah, the censure motion.
Or something like that.
Yes, the censure motion. Yeah.
It was for them a boycott.
Yes.
It was a safer one.
It was a boycott because you see, once you say boycott, anybody who goes there, you know that the traitor.
Right.
Quote unquote.
Right.
So, because you see, first of all, we're dealing with 136 against 137.
138.
So, 138.
Yeah.
So, right from the word go, you are going to have numerical issues.
Absolutely.
So, you have taken a principle stand that I do not want to be part of this conversation. So, you boycott it.
Right.
Then the record will show that on this day, on all these ministerial appointments, the minority caucus boycotted it.
And that's on record.
It's on record. That one, you don't get anybody to express dissent.
I get that.
Like I said, we are learning.
Right. Franklin, look, with all the the explanations and the theories and analysis we've made, the fact of the matter is that the NDC support base, I can't speak for everybody, but I know there are some persons, if you check what's happening on social media, they're very livid. They're very, very hurt. Some say they're disappointed. And there have been all kinds of conspiracy theories that have been thrown out there. Your very good friend, I don't want to mention name, but you know who I'm talking about. His name has come up, and some other persons as well that, and people are asking questions. Could it be because of A, B, C, D? That's why we have what we have. How does the party move forward based on everything that has happened? And this is briefly before we go to the issue about political party financing. Or how does the party deal with this?
I think the party would have to find, if you like, other ways of engaging. I can understand they've taken a very hardline stance, a stance I somehow tacitly approve in a way, because our politics has become a bit too boring because the state has this octopus-like hands and legs everywhere, right. By the way. And so I think the party should start with some sort of an inward looking and have conversations with the leadership, and indeed, almost everybody in Parliament. That I'm not saying they should stall the affairs of state, not at all, but they should have opportunities to engage in such a way that they can make definite statements and say, "Look, this is not just for us; it is also for the country."
Okay,
and so that conversation is quite really needed. And let me just say something about my good friend Eduji. By the way, I think he's one of the very few legal brains that competently discusses economic issues as well. That I'm always in constant awe, very constantly awe. Thank you. No problem.
Right, frankly, let's do this. Let's do this quickly. In fact, that's actually the more reason why we invited you to join us, because I know it's something that you take particular interest in. It has to do with the way we finance our campaign, and sometimes the fear that the sources of funding may be problematic. So we know what happened with that launch, the former president launching a financing, what you call it, model, which is based on crowdsourcing. So everyone living everywhere in this world could, contribute with their widow's mite. I'm sure you watched it, or you may have listened to it on radio. Fantastic idea. And do you also agree that this then raises that more critical issue about how we finance our campaign, and something that we really need to look at? There have been all kinds of suggestions that have come up, but before we get there, I'm just going to take your preliminary comment on that big event before we proceed.
Well, presumably, if we are a party that boasts of over 4 million, of like half of the voting public, then it presupposes that they are wherewithal. Their livelihoods must be impacted in such a way that they would make a modicum of support, give a modicum of support to your cause.
Right.
I mean, it's like that, and that should be the basis in any civilized society, right? Because it means that the party, while having been in power before, has invested in critical infrastructure, invested in critical social amenities that would have helped these persons that they count as their members anyway. Therefore, nothing at all that you are starting off on a clean sheet without the aid of big bucks and big donors. At least those people you call your grassroots, that must have been nourished, well nourished, so that they can have a little spare, even if they don't have spare. But for the love of party, they may say, okay, I'm ready to part with a few CDs every month.
Right.
But that should be the fundamental basis for having some party financing structure. But what we currently have, as has been discussed, our cousins at CDD and John and Co have been doing excellent work on this throughout the Afrobarometer conversations. Clearly, you have all these big gods, thin gods that have taken over the party, not just taking over political parties, and you see their amorphous in every part of our economic and social life. If it is, be it at the ports where they get favors for bringing goods in and then at lower rates, or they get sumptuous deals through very crotchety procurement procedures, and then as a result of that, the state gets shortchanged. So this idea that John Mahama and the NDC is actually championing, it's a very useful one. But let's not also forget, I recall that I think the NDPP, I think when Nanado was in the position, he tried something like that. I mean, short quotes and all of that. But of course, we never get to see the results anyway. So now the idea is by John essentially is that let's have this publicized. Let's know exactly what it costs to run an election. I can say that I can only wish the country well in having this conversation. Because it's going to take a lot of faith and a lot of faith, in fact, a lot of work in order to get this done, if not through Parliament. But the last idea I would ever support is state funding of political parties. Never, ever should the state money be used to fund political parties. Otherwise, we have a gazillion of them. And then all of a sudden, people will be, of course, they'll create all sort of employment by having political parties. And it's fairly easy to recruit members anyway. These days, if you are going to be recognized as a legitimate political party, I disagree entirely on that basis. And to that extent, I share Mohammed's view that, assuming we've been thinking of it, we should not possibly now. I mean, he even suggested because of our finances. I am suggesting wherever ever, we should never entertain the idea of funding political parties. Otherwise, they will never develop the country. That would develop their own members to make some support, to give support back to the party.
Okay. Franklin, thank you so very much for your time. And Dr. John Osei-Kwapon, please hang in a minute. I'll come back to you as well. Franklin, I want to thank you very much. You have other engagements, so I'll let go of you. I'll come back in-house and ask Gordon to throw some more light on this broad-based citizens' participation scheme which the NDC has launched. What else do we need to know about this? So perhaps before I even ask that question, what really was the thinking that went into it? Is it that the NDC is broke, is looking for money? Or really and truly in line with what the party has said before, which is that they want to tackle the issue about corruption? One way in which to tackle this is to get each and everybody to contribute to the party rather than leaving it to some, as Franklin said, thin God to take charge and create all sorts of problems for the party when it gets the opportunity to govern. Which is which? Or it's a combination of both?
So once again, thanks very much. You see, first of all, this is a campaign platform of H.E. John Dramani Mahama.
Right. Okay.
So it is not a platform per se for the NDC.
Okay.
Remember that at this juncture, yes, we say he's a presumptive flag bearer.
Right.
But he is not the flag bearer technically.
Okay.
So whatever he's doing now, he's doing it in his capacity as one of the aspirants.
Right.
So we need to draw that distinction.
Very important.
So it cannot therefore be the case that the NDC is broke.
Right.
Now, it's also important to make the point that the question of funding political parties has been on the burner.
Right.
There had been different theories,
Since the days of Adam.
expressed relative to this conversation. But you see, I can just give you a very simple. Parties have different, diverse ways of raising funds, right? One of it may even be filing fees for internal contests. As we speak today, you are aware that we are having in excess of almost 500 people having filed nominations.
Okay.
Yes.
Parliamentary?
Yes.
Wow.
Greater Accra alone, we have 37 constituencies, 34 constituencies.
Right.
So even if you are doing two
Each.
that's almost 60 something.
Absolutely.
And in some constituencies, there are 4, 5.
Right.
If you go to a place like Ashanti, on the face of it, we have 47 constituencies. So even if you are having in a typical constituency 2, 3, 4, 5, in Volta region, in some constituencies, as many as 10. So if you put all together, we've had almost 500 people picking nomination form for our internal contest alone.
That's a lot
Moro,
of money.
even if you are doing 40,000, okay, Ghana cedis times 500, that gives you 20 million.
Straight away.
Straight away.
In the party's coffers.
In the party's coffers, direct. Because this one, if you don't pay, you can't even submit your form. Moro. So this one is giving you 20 million Ghana cedis, not taxable.
Right.
You understand?
Right.
Not taxable. So I just want to disabuse the notion
that the party is broke.
is broke.
It cannot be broke.
It cannot be.
Right.
On the face of it. But you see, over the period, the narrative has always been, if you allow the big money bags to control the political funding or process, what it does is that it gives them too much control and power. So, for instance, Edwigi goes for presidential elections. My brother here gives me about a third of my entire budget.
Right.
Immediately he comes, you know what, I have some GMPC data on some oil blocks. Mr. President, I need that oil block. What would be your basis to say I won't give it to him?
It will be difficult.
Would be extremely difficult. Right? Look, there's a U.S. Supreme Court decision, Citizen United versus the Federal Electoral Commission, about the influence of corporations in U.S. elections. Look, is it the Koch's brothers or something?
Right.
There's some brothers, billionaires. They control the entire Republican setup. Yes. And if they say they don't want you, no Republican president will appoint you.
That's how powerful they are.
That's how powerful. And how have they controlled it? They use their money to sponsor adverts, to sponsor a lot of things. Right? So, it is that conversation. Because you see, H.E. John Dramani Mohammed's campaign team really is the Ghana
we want.
What Ghana do you want? Do you want a Ghana where a few people control the political party? Or you want a Ghana where, as an individual member of the NDC, you have a say at the very last end of the conversation? So that the conversation is no longer about how much Moro is bringing on the table. So we are looking at a system that, one, is broad-based, two, transparent. And we believe that if you have these 3 or 2 critical situations, what it does is that it will greatly reduce. Look, I'll say this. I recall in MPP, there was a conversation. So somebody raised an issue about, there was a policy statement government brought.
Okay.
I think on the ban on used cars or something.
Yes.
So one of the MPP presidential candidates, Kennedy Pong,
Right.
came out and said, I said, man, I'm okay. In 2016, Emra na party no ehia cars no. Me na me mam pickup. Pickup na me mam no. E use pickup. And no man power into no most more banning use cars. Have you seen the mindset?
Yeah, because these party financiers have to protect their interests,
Exactly the point.
even if it's at the detriment of the state.
They don't even care. Because you see, they are like, what we call them, angel investors, right? They are putting their money in there for return. No businessman does for that Christmas. It matters not how generous or the person says he is. He's doing it for an ultimate end. So that is what has informed the GM campaign to look at this alternative funding source. Because remember that there had been key conversation that in order to prevent the money bags from taking charge of the political system, the state itself must fund
It's political parties.
the political parties. But hey, the state that is in China asking for support, if you want to burden it further, in any case, what exactly will be the budget? What budget is NDC going to present for the purpose of support?
Right.
What budget is MPP going to present for the purpose of state support? PNC, CPP, and all those other political parties. How are you going to do that? So, having looked within, we believe that we need to start the conversation by looking at a broad base, equitable, transparent process of funding political activities.
Right.
And we believe that what we have brought on board so far, and this one is the use of technology without more, effortless. You design a system whereupon you have your best brains coming up with a fintech solution on how to raise. In any case, even in our traditional setup, Sebi, when someone is dead, the family members will call, all family members, right? Adra, ene oma, mutua 1 cedi. Ama, onso ne oma, mutua we. Is that not why we do it? Crowdfund.
Crowdfund.
In our churches, don't we do what we call a Kofi Nyama? We do those ones.
Is that the same as Boni Pansa or something? That's it.
And so what is donation?
It's donation, okay.
And it's different. This one is in the church where you are saying, today Monday bonds. We are selling this for the highest this. The poor, the rich, everybody will partake.
It's actually part of our culture already.
So it's a cultural thing.
It's not
to
alien
crowdfund.
To crowdfund.
And so basically what we are saying is that even our communities, church buildings are built by community contribution. And from me where I grew up, even in our farms, we do a nobwa. At this time when the rains are coming, especially from January, February when the rains are coming, we'll go and raise the amounts. Right? When we go there, other members of the community will come and help. When we finish, we go to another person's farm. So the concept of crowdfunding is completely cultural. It's not alien to us. And you see, the interesting thing is that when all of us go to the farm of Kweju to help him, and we go to another person's farm, whatever you get becomes communal.
Right.
Because we believe that when you get it, the end result comes back to the community where we operate. And so that is what is informing the whole concept of the funding through the use of this technology.
Right.
Yes.
Honorable, I've heard some people say that typically when parties are in government, they don't think along this route because you have more access, you have power, and with power you have access to more resources. And I've heard the former president say that, look, this should be a bipartisan matter. All political parties should go this direction. This crowdsourcing, crowdfunding, model of raising funds. Is this something that the NPP would want to look at?
Well,
or take more seriously? I mean, it's not something, I won't say the NPP has never mentioned it before, but, taking it to the next level.
So let me say one key thing.
Okay.
They say that the person who pays the piper calls the tune.
Absolutely.
And this adage has been there from time immemorial.
Right.
And if we intend to change the tune and we don't want to pay the piper, forget it. The reason why I'm saying this is, even with this approach of crowdfunding, if every Ghanaian should put in 10 cedis and some gambler puts in $1 million, right away he, bullshits everything that has been done.
Okay.
So he becomes the highest bidder. Literally. And all other noise will be drawn out.
But would the person still have the incentive to put in that $1 million?
Well, the point here is that,
because the reason I'll collect that $1 million because I'm in that so baby. I don't have any anywhere.
You never have enough money for campaign.
Right.
You understand? Politics or campaign is a beast. It can take everything you have. So besides that, there's one key thing I also need to tell Ghanaians, that we did adopt a polling station, which was also a fundraising approach.
Okay.
We didn't make maybe too much noise in terms of...
When you were in the position.
Yes. Now, the other thing too is that, let me be very honest. If you're in power and you're asking for money, the average Ghanaian will look at you like, do you think I'm a fool? I mean, that's what they're going to literally say, because they're of the opinion that once you're in government, you have access to resources.
That's true.
And unfortunately, it's the wrong perception. I think I saw President Obama still raising funds, and the Americans still donated in his second
it's
attempt.
a truism. I'll take a break. I'll come back to
You understand? So
it's a truism that with power you have access to resources. But whether you want to tap into that resources or not, it's another matter. But
there's another thing when we come back. One key thing.
Because you want to be an honorable Dixon who is so clean that he doesn't want to be corrupt.
One other key thing is...
Before I get that, we need to take a break.
Okay.
And it's important we talk about this.
Sure, I'll wait for it.
Power and access to resources. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. This is Inside Pages. All right, welcome back. This is Inside Pages. I know you're enjoying yourself. I mean, this is the place to be every Saturday morning from 8 to 10. You want to listen to insightful, riveting, great conversations. It's on Inside. It's on Inside Pages. Dr. John Osai Kwapong is a fellow of CDD Ghana. He's been listening in. In fact, he's made some submissions, but he's also been listening. I want to thank you very much for patiently hanging in there, because I'll come back to him on this political financing matter, which is now the topic we're looking at. Of course, it follows, on the back of the big event that happened. I think it was on Wednesday, wasn't it? It was on Wednesday, where the former President John Mahama launched a political financing platform for Ghanaians who live everywhere in this world to contribute their widow's mite towards his campaign as the presumptive candidate or presumptive flag bearer of the NDC. But then we say it raises a bigger question about how we're financing our campaign and whether the sources of the monies that are being used are actually legitimate or not. So that's where we are. But you raise a very interesting issue, because I talked about, you said there's a perception, and the perception is sort of works against parties in government. Now, if you say, help me raise funds for my campaign, they say, this is kind of
as it stands now, my friends that supported me shy away from donating anything, and
really?
it's unfortunate, in the sense that I'm in government, and the other key thing is that some of us, when in power, we take on very huge projects, which then even requires ever so more funding. And prior to going into government, if I was supporting maybe 100 students, I may now have to support 1,000 students, and in that sense, puts more pressure or demand on myself. So one, you need to have people who are experienced in terms of politicking. We have investors for politics because they understand the terrain. Just as a construction company has investors who understand construction and are willing to put in. So that's another key thing. Now, ultimately, there's another side of all of this campaign funding, which is very important, which is even more important for me, as in the limitations that are put on the spender or the exchequer for the fund.
But we don't have the laws to do that, do we?
Well, that's what I'm saying, that, you know, we should look at the two.
Okay.
I know elsewhere people are jailed for misappropriation of campaign funds. You know, and those two things are important. If there are no checks on how you spend, then one, the person could use it for corrupt means,
subject to abuse.
Yes, subject to abuse, and will not be in alignment with what maybe the people who donated the funds for. And for all you know, when and if a campaign donation lands in a Galamsey company, you can imagine what would happen. And that is why tracing when the money comes in and where the money goes will be very important for many people who will be willing to put in. Or, quote unquote, looking at our cultural background here, you put in money for Mahama and only to find out that he's supporting child trafficking, and that can kill you, you know, in terms of you, the donor. So it's very important. I think that from that standpoint of a holistic view, we shouldn't just talk about give, but we ought to be transparent and show that what I'm taking in, this is what I'm actually going to spend, is going towards fuel. It's going towards refreshing people that we'll be talking to. It's going towards helping the sick. Like I was saying, if I was helping a few people with their medical bills, now you can imagine X more amount are coming to me for those medical bills. So I'll use this opportunity to also say that, listen, being in politics doesn't necessarily mean that you have you know, the lajas and you know, we always wish to do more.
There are, so in essence, there are people who are still in opposition even though their party is in power.
Oh, I mean that is 120% right.
Because there's no equity, strictly speaking.
And I say this, that sometimes, unfortunately, some of us are disadvantaged by the mere size of our constituency and the fact that government is set up in a way that if common fund is 20 Ghana, all constituencies are getting 20 Ghana.
That's not fair.
When your population is big. And I've also even said on many platforms that if you do 2 kilometers in Anyasotum, you stand a chance of having more people see the road done, more so than 2 kilometers in another place like, you know, Sege, or, you know, somewhere, you know, where nobody really travels. And these are some of the dynamics. Just to state an example, the Pokwase interchange will be seen by many more people. Likewise, this 10 carriage that is coming between Pokwase and is it Insawem and beyond, and I really think that when that is done, anybody going to Kumasi in this country by road would
benefit from
would have no doubt when we make a claim that, you know, the president has done roads, because mind you, for that same stretch, if there are 10 lanes, that means you're multiplying 10 lanes by that kilometer.
Absolutely.
And you can imagine what this is. This makes Temamoto Way nothing in terms of, you know, this development. And I would conclude that, yes, I mean, it's good that Mahama somehow is coming to that realization, but many people have talked about this, and the MPP literally did adopt a polling station and other things in terms of raising funds when we're coming. And you know, it's good. I'm happy he's doing something, but you know, more importantly,
it's an initiative you would commend him for.
Oh, I mean, why not?
I'll do this. I'll come to you, Dr. John Osai Kwapo. And again, Godwin, based or flowing from what Honorable has just said, my final question to you, which you're wrapping up with, will be about how do you convince somebody who wants to donate towards this cause that the monies will be used for its intended purpose? In terms of how is this platform going to be operationalized? There's some stuff you're telling us off air. No, worry. I'll come. That's your final question. So don't worry at all. You'd have all the time to walk us through how it's going to be operationalized, and then also the issue about transparency. So two back-to-back questions. Now, a few messages have come through, WhatsApp messages. I'll read them and then I'll go to Dr. John Osai Kwapo. Now, this one said, the National Distraction Council, the NDC, has big cracks within, and no matter what those current leadership would do, it won't stand the test of time and the situations like this in Parliament. I feel very sorry for this dead and gone political party, Gideon Sunyane Bono region. Good morning, my brother. I'm seriously disappointed with the NDC MPs for failing to disrespect and disregard the party instructions. Emmanuel from Angloga, Potogbe, I hope I got the Potogbe, Volta region. Thank God we're now going to do our primaries. We'll show them we'll show them where the power lies. Even as from Western North region, people vex. That's Esam Debiso. Good morning. The argument can't be because of the ministries involved. If it was the importance of them, the government would have listened to the call of Ghanaians to reduce the size of the government in order to get the approval for the needed ministries. From where I sit, I can only conclude that the government already knew they have some of the minority guys on their side who would vote for them. That's how come they stubbornly refuse to do what the nation is calling for the purposes of covering up and not give the impression that they have some of the minority on their side. They pretend to appeal to the minorities so as not to betray those of the minority who are in the pockets of the majority. If not for the monetary gains or some material gains, then what else? This is shameful, and I've said all the time, this minority is a disgrace and a disappointment. Pastor Daniel Geja, I hope I got that correctly. Is it the lawmaker speaking? How do you vote and take a video of your vote, which is a secret vote? Anyway, Rickett Hagan said the leadership from the majority side told the leadership from the minority side that they bought a certain number of the minority members, and the number at the end of the voting coincides. From JSA Dantoman Mpoase. Is that what Honorable Rickett Hagan said? Well, I haven't heard that, so I'll issue a caveat. Salifu Dokurugu from Kulinye Villa in Tamale. What members of the NDC did yesterday indicates that they can rescue this country when given the mandate come 2024. We have the report of, so this is not it. And then finally, Michael Atia from Bolga, MPP NDC, same people, same character, doing business together, doctrine like angels from heaven, but monkey business in their hearts. Good morning, I'm Albert from Wager. The NDC MPs not to be trusted for me. I would not take part in parliamentary voting for them again. And this one, Mama Yariga put it aptly. When it comes to these matters of approving ministerial appointment, there is a lot of exogenous factors that come into play. Ultimately, MPs are forced to pressure fight to preserve vital relationships. Kwabena Efrifa Jr. sends that message. Okay, so here we go. Dr. John Osei Kwapo, I don't know, where do you stand on this as far as this political financing or political party campaign financing is concerned?
Well, I have always been, in principle, a big supporter of the idea of state funding of political parties. I know that, particularly given the economic challenges this time around, it's not an idea that most people would want to have a conversation around, because then they are going to point you to the fact that you're talking about a state that is broke and you're talking about state funding of political parties. But for me, if we could find a way, some mechanism where the state can provide some funding for political parties through a certain formula, whether we are using their share of votes, in an election, whether it's how much airtime you give them on public broadcasting, etc., etc. It does a number of things. One of the key things that it does is that I think it has a way of leveraging the playing field a little bit more, because then the advantage that comes with incumbency can be matched somewhat. But again, my view is also in the minority view, right? I wrote a piece on this several weeks ago, and the sentiment of Ghanaians have actually changed. So in 2005, when CDD did a study on this, and part of it was a survey, you had at least about a 50% plus support for some kind of state funding for political parties. Years later, in the most recent Afrobarometer survey in 2022, there is strong disapproval for any kind of state funding of political parties. So if there is not public appetite for that in terms of the state playing a role, then for me, the other state role that must be paid attention to then is the enforcement piece. Because if you look at the Constitution and if you look at the Political Parties Act, there are certain obligations that are placed on political parties in terms of where they can raise money from to fund the party, to campaign. But most importantly, it also places a reporting burden on political parties, right? They have to, who is giving what to them, how much, they have to have these published accounts, etc., etc. Probably they do, but in the years that I've been following party politics in the Fourth Republic, I'm yet to see an example of any of these reports from political parties in terms of their audited accounts. Yes, you would always hear in the news things like, oh, person A gives a lot to the party, person B gives a lot to this party, etc., etc. So if state funding is out of the question because the public has no appetite for it now, then for me, the enforcement of the legal framework that is in place, or even the tightening of that legal framework, and then in particular, the transparency around party financing becomes very critical for me, which is why I think the step of the former president, John Mahama, is in the right direction, right? I watched the presentation, I watched the demonstration, and one of the platforms that I saw actually would show that, person A who is associated with this number gave X amount on this day, and the dashboard actually shows, how much is coming in, etc., etc. The Honorable Kusi also raised a very important point, which is, in addition to who is giving and what is coming in, it places another obligation on the political parties to also demonstrate that this is how we are spending those monies, so they know that the money I'm giving to support a candidate or to support a party is not being used for any other kind of activity besides that which I donated the money from. Lawyer Gigi talked about the Citizens United case in the US. And the interesting thing from that ruling also was that the court did say, look, money is speech, right? They treated money as a free speech issue and said some people vote, some people do advocacy, and some people participate in the political process through their money, right? Unfortunately, then it blew away any sort of caps on spending, because then in the conservative majority view, if you put spending caps on campaign financing, then you are limiting people's free speech. But I think that we could come up with a healthy framework that also places some healthy limits on how much an individual or an organization can donate to a candidate or a party. Because this may sound cynical, but I've always said that I refuse to believe that it is because of love of democracy and good governance that someone would give $1 billion to a political party or to a candidate. I just can't accept that would be the sole motivation of that kind of investment in a candidate or in a political party. So the transparency issue for me becomes really key in all of this. I've looked at the structures of our two main political parties, and I was blown apart to think of the kind of infrastructure they have to put in place to get the party mechanism going, and then to think of what it takes to organize themselves for an election. It actually does cost money. So you can't totally take money out of party politics. You can't take money out from elections. The question is the kind of role you want money to play in party politics and the kinds of rules that you place around money to ensure that it strengthens parties to be able to, to organize, to go out there and campaign. And instead of money becoming a tool through which certain individuals are able to hijack a particular political party or hijack a particular policy agenda.
I get it.
And so for me, these are some of the things that I think, as we have this conversation around party financing, campaign financing, we should also look at. But I really do commend the former president for at least showing us one way that it can be done. It is also very countercultural in the sense that there are times where people want to even hide their political identity or their political affiliation. So I'm very curious to see how all of this plays out, where individuals really would want to know that I, person A, gave X amount of money to a particular candidate or to a particular political party. But it's a very good step in the right direction. I think, I believe that there's some consensus around and concerns about money in our politics. And I'm sure that there will be different ideas in terms of how we are able to deal with the issue. But I'm glad we are having that conversation, and I'm sure eventually we'll find ways to be able to at least find healthy ways how money can play a role in our politics, because you really cannot take money out of politics.
All right then, Doc, thank you very much. I'll let go of you now because you also have other things you need to attend to. In any case, we have about 7 minutes to wrap up. Now, I'll come back to you, lawyer Godwin Edizu Tamaklo. You've been part of the processes of putting this whole thing up, so you're more than competent enough to speak to it. So just three quick questions. One, how are these platforms going to be operationalized? How transparent are they going to be? And how accountable are you going to be to persons who would donate to these platforms? Those are just three questions that if you can, so we can wrap up.
Yes. So how
does it work?
The platform is built in such a way that obviously there's an interface.
Okay.
So whatever goes through, you can see.
Right.
You understand.
Okay.
And we also make sure to comply with all our anti-money laundering rules and regulations, just to ensure complete compliance with the laws of this country. So there's an interface that allows you to see who is doing what, who is not doing. And then there's a faction out periodic reporting system.
Okay.
So that you know how much has come in, how much is going in. At least because you see, again, like I said, we're looking at a system that is transparent.
Right.
A system that is broad-based. So for instance, myself, I have done it. I've paid in. Because we believe that, look, charity must begin
at home.
Exactly. So if you want to encourage others to do it, then you must take the lead in demonstrating that. And so I have personally gone through and I've seen it, that kind of thing. So you can always monitor the system from the interface that had been created. So that's just on the bit of it. And again, how much will be spent? Like I told you, eventually the campaign has its... You see, so in Ghana here, we do not have a legislation on it. In the US, they have strict campaign financing and the utilization laws. So for instance, if you're going for governor and people give you their $2, their $3, $10, $20, $100, and all of those monies, right? And at the end of the day, they see you use part of the money for lunch, for this, for what have you. You're on your way to prison. You're on your way to prison.
I get it.
So one of the conversations that even came up when H.E. John Dramani Mahama spoke is the issue that we need to even look at the current Political Parties Act and if possible, provide certain key amendments that would incorporate some of these revolutionary changes.
All right. Doc, how much are you prepared to contribute to this platform? 10 cities, 20 cities, 50? 100?
If it's
Because
for if it's for
principle, you agree.
beta testing, I could put something in. You know, yeah, you know, it happens.
Your final remarks. We have just 2 minutes to go.
So I think overall Ghana's democracy is maturing, and yesterday for me was a very true test of our democracy, and I really think that we need to improve on it. In terms of the expertise behind the decision making, and I'm very sure that if, for instance, the NDC yesterday had some very solid team of strategists and lawyers advising them, they would have told them that the end game looks like this and that you should have done that. And I think that both parties need to do that to really improve on our relationship with our grassroots and our education to the grassroots. And let me end on one key thing. We swore an oath in the chamber, and I think that secrecy to some extent is very important. And I'm not necessarily in support of what happened yesterday in terms of members who videoed, filmed, or took pictures of their vote cast. I think they've done democracy a disservice, and I would not encourage it because your vote is your power. And it's important that we make this clear. I know my honorable member has made an argument in terms of how the video left his phone and all of that, but I think that literally what he should have done was played it to the member and not shared. And either way, filming it to begin with, I think, was erroneous.
So once you share it, it becomes predisposed.
And even the idea of filming, I really think that personally is damaging for the oath of secrecy in terms of what we do as parliament.
Mr. Jason Tutu says, please, can you ask Professor Kwapon what he thinks about putting a cap on campaign expenditure by candidates and also a cap on how much an individual or a single entity may donate to a political campaign? Can that be helpful in taming the raging monocracy that's essentially ravaging so-called democracy? That's a very important question. I think you sort of alluded to that to some extent in your submission. But anyway, so I want to say a very big thanks to Godwin Edith Tamakolo. It's always a pleasure having him here. It's a fantastic gentleman, awesome man. Just same as the Honorable Member of Parliament for the Anyasotum constituency, Dixon Adomako Kisi. Very hard-working member of parliament as well. Thank you so very much for joining us. I also want to say a big thanks to Dr. John Osai-Kwapo, who is a fellow with CDD Ghana, and also Franklin Kujo, founding president Imani Africa. I hope you enjoyed yourself. My name is Audu Moro. Thanks for watching. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.